NFL Players Association and the NFL, it appears, are having high level, quote, very high level discussions over potentially adding an 18th regular season game to the schedule. That's from the NFLPA Executive Director Lloyd Howell. Just a gut feeling. Is that coming, do you think, the 18th game? And if it does, 2 bye weeks, how does that work, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely coming and has been for a while. And I think number one, it's significant that the NFLPA are the ones telling you about this. Like that sort of shows how far along this is in the process. It's not rumors swirling, it's them trying to get out ahead of it. Number two, I actually think it's a smart thing for them to be talking about potentially agreeing to it independent of a new CBA. You know, the new collective bargaining agreement isn't due until 2030, I think. And every time a CBA negotiation comes around, the NFLPA kind of gets wrecked. And it makes sense because it's too difficult to tie down, 3,000, 5,000 players worth of disparate views and opinions and wants and needs. Whereas the NFL just has to wrangle 32 billionaires together, and more or less those guys want the same thing. It's a lot easier to come together with a list of priorities, and here are the 5 things we want out of these negotiations, and here are the things we're willing to sacrifice to make it happen. The NFLPA, it's too hard to even get all of their players on the same page and figure out what they want to negotiate for, let alone what they're willing to give up and how they're willing to make it happen. So I think it's probably smart of them to separate these negotiations and say, okay, we're willing to give you your 18th game, but to make that happen, we're going to need the concession of, say, a second bye week or, something like that to grease the skids and get everybody on board for it. I do think it makes some sense to, if you're going to have the 18th game, we lose a preseason game, we get an extra bye week in there, we can properly kind of reset the NFL schedule a little bit and make this make a lot more sense.
Yeah, the other thing that goes unstated a lot of times, second bye week means there's an extra week of games, which again drives television revenue, which drives up the remember the salary cap is a percentage of revenues, so that ups the salary cap, probably means more spots on NFL rosters as well.
Yeah, more money for everybody. I mean, it does make sense, and this is why ultimately I think it's something that is going to happen, and the NFLPA is probably not that against. They just want to make sure that they get something in return. If we're going to expose our players to an extra week of injuries, we want an extra bye week. We want, something like that. We want one fewer preseason game. They're going to want something in return, but you're right. Like ultimately, they're going to benefit from this regardless because there's more money coming in.